So in this video, we're checking out an IEM from ZiiGaat, and this is the Horizon. We got the driver kind, 1 DD, 2 BAs, and 2 planners. So these are most likely micro planners. So this would be a Tribrid type. Going to the side, we can see more parameters. 102 sensitivity, 24 ohm, pretty low distortion, and then the frequency range. And obviously comes with a cable that's 1.2 meters, which is about 3 feet or so. But yeah, not too much here in the back and here on the side, but yeah, pretty standard looking box. So on the inside, we have another box, and it's actually quite nice. Got the ZiiGaat logo there. It's all black, and it opens magnetically, which is a nice touch. Padded. And here we can see the IEMs. Very nicely presented. Beautiful looking. With the resin type shell. We can see there it says Horizon. It's labeled also L for left. Definitely a beautiful design and quite unique. So I guess those are kind of like mountain peaks with ocean and night sky on the top. And we do have the ZiiGaat logo in there too. So yeah, quite beautiful looking. And a nice mold that's kind of got some curvature to it. Pretty deep insertion too, which I do prefer. And we got little grills there and a lip for the tips. It is a 2-pin. We got a breather there. Pretty nice. Basically what the rest of ZiiGaat look like. Pretty much the same design with different styles. So in the box, we have more stuff in here, or I guess I should say the rest of it is in here. Some documentation, and we get a really nice carrying case. It's actually quite large. You guys can see. Got this branding here. So it is like a leather. Obviously probably not real leather, but it feels really nice and soft. And it's just clean looking. Even zipper says ZiiGaat on it. Pretty smooth. And on the inside here is where we're going to find our cable that is interchangeable. So it's the slide out kind. I actually like this because you can switch them quick. Some people prefer the screw-ons. I actually did enjoy this because I can bounce between the two pretty quick. And it never was an issue of popping out on its own or anything like that. So yeah, we do get a 4.4 and a 3.5. So I enjoy the 3.5 more, even though I also use the 4.4, but on another cable I'll show you guys. And this is the original cable. It's quite thin, actually very thin. Like not bad overall. It feels good for the lightness of it, but it does get a little fussy and tangly, as you guys can kind of see here. And when it splits here, which we do have a pretty good, nice metal, and I got the cincher here up to kind of organize them a little better. It is like a double hole. Not bad. I mean, it works. It does feel a little bit cheap and kind of fiddly sometimes, trying to move them back and forth, and they got memory to them. They kind of jump back to where they want to go. They're not very, I guess, friendly for just sitting there, but overall well done. On the ends themselves, we do have a little red dot and a blue dot. Maybe hard to see, but that's how you distinguish the left and right. So the red would obviously be the right and the blue the left. There's a little more to say about this cable, and we'll talk about it later, but the other things that we got is a bunch of tips. And to be honest, I tried them all. We get some dark tips. We even get some foam tips, clear tips also. And the only ones that I thought were pretty good were these clear ones. Even though they were pretty good, they were still too much for these IEMs. It really boosted the highs and upper highs too much for me. But yeah, pretty much just getting a set of tips. Clears, the black ones, and then 2 foams. And then with the silicone ones, you just get 3 pairs of medium, large, and small. So one thing that's pretty cool about the case is that you can, well, I guess you guys can see, there's a molding here to put the IEMs kind of in here, but I noticed that's harder to use than it should be, and it's kind of like odd shaped. So what was better is just to pull this out, and then you just have a really nice, huge area to put stuff in here, which, again, this case is awesome. So I'd probably just get rid of this if I was going to use it. And honestly, mine was kind of dented right here anyway, so it came in like that. It's like a little bigger than the case and forces it to bend in there, but it is nice and felty on the inside, very soft. So yeah, excellent case. All right, so let's talk about the ZiiGaat Horizons. So overall, my impressions were pretty blown away, especially in the beginning when I first put them in. I was so shocked of how much detail coming out of these things. They're reasonably well behaved, probably more like a U signature, maybe even a W signature, that are quite neutral, but then again, a little bit bright. And if I would summarize these, this is what I would say. They're just a bit bright, at least for my taste. So the shells fit my ears very well. They look beautiful. No complaints here. The nozzle extension here was nice, and I was able to fit into my ear and get a good seal. Because these are resin, overall they're pretty light, and the cable is ultra light too, so quite easy to wear them. I had no issues, going 3-4 hours plus. But I did land on some foam tips, and these are by Comply. I think this is series 500. They're just regular foam tips. They're a little bit on the larger side. They are medium, but they're pretty thick, or pretty large, I guess I should say, and they're really squishy. And these things really sealed well, and also sounded the best to me out of all the options I had to try. They really cut down on the sibilance and isolated, and also had a deeper insertion as they're quite large, and a very good seal. So this is going to be kind of preference, but I tend to lean to foam, especially for brighter IEMs like this. So let's start with the bass here. The bass was actually impressive. It goes low and goes deep and has a good rumble to it. Nothing crazy, obviously, but definitely enough to satisfy. Like very light signatures, this might be too much bass, but for average, I would say the sub bass is definitely there, and could be much on some tracks depending on how they are. Now when we go to mid bass, we kind of start to really taper off, and it sounds more natural and clean, so there's not a large hit. It is there, and sometimes I guess I wish there would be a little more, but for the most part, very clean and very natural sounding for mid bass. And so the separation between the sub and mid is really good, and they don't bleed into each other much, or not that I heard at all. So let's go to the mid range. So the mid range is quite interesting because it is quite subdued, as in like pulled back just a little bit, but at the same time still very, very pleasant and very there. So it's not forward or not recessed too much. I would say it's pretty natural sounding, and so there's not much like shouting or any kind of over the top kind of stuff going on in the mid range. So I would say quite pleasant. So for female vocals and male vocals, it has a good balance between the two, with favoring the female vocal a little more, I would say, the upper range of the voice. Now if we go to the treble, this is where we really start to go crazy on these things. Because of those micro planners, these things really hit high, and so we have a lot of airiness, a lot of sparkle, a good amount of sparkle, and a lot of resolution where you can hear a lot of detail. So imaging and separation is quite good. The micro details are also quite good, and just the overall detail retrieval is quite incredible on these things. And obviously this is going to all depend on your source. So the highs is where a lot of the resolution is, and these things really pull that resolution out. Now, with pulling all that out, you do get the brighter side of things. And if you're kind of sensitive to brightness, and after listening to these, I figured out that I was, these would definitely seem a little bright. For me, like anything with a C or a S, and the voices seem to really stand out and kind of pierce. And so I was unable to really enjoy the music because of that on the brighter tracks. On more duller, more, I guess we could say, well mixed tracks or well produced, those sounded very well. But for the most part of the music, there is a semblance in the S's and and some like the hi-hats on the cymbals on drums also were a little harsh in my opinion. And so I could not really listen to this without doing any kind of EQ, just flat out. And the sources that I used were mostly this Q-style dongles. So we have the 15C, the 15I, and then the 12I. So all these dongles are pretty nice, and they have their own kind of signatures. 15I being the most detailed, did not pair good with this. It was just too much. I mean, you would get crazy retrieval, but it was just too much for me. Good for like short burst of listening of something like, wow, that's impressive, but definitely not able to sustain that listening. So I landed on this 15C, which is a series DAC compared to these ESS. This became more warmer, more fuller, more open, and that kind of toned down the higher upper range and still was technical enough to enjoy the details. So if you're looking for a dongle that's kind of more neutral but also can do the details and more warm, at least out of the Q-style dongles here, this is the one to go for, as I enjoyed this one probably the most out of these three. I also enjoyed this one a lot, but it all depends on the IEMs. Like this one actually pairs super great with usually cheaper IEMs, as it pushes them hard and pulls the details out. And this one is kind of more like lushy, slushy, very puffy sound. Sounds really good, and I actually enjoyed this dongle a lot. But yeah, for the Horizons, the C here was definitely the pick. Using the original cable, I noticed has very, very resolutionary kind of transmission. And it actually was a big difference because I tried other cables, and this thing really pushes the highs and the details a lot more. I don't know exactly what they're using in there, but it definitely is much different than, let's say, a cable like this. So this is just a regular copper, silver plated, just has lots of strands, 16 I think total. And I have a 4.4 here. Like using this cable with the Horizon really made them so much more pleasant to listen to, as it kind of cut down on the harshness and just really softened it up. If you're just too sensitive to too much detail, try another cable. That'll help a lot. Another thing that really helped, and this might be harder to believe, is the data cable. So the original data cables that comes with the Q-styles is good and works fine, but upgrading to this pure silver by DD HiFi cable really made a difference. It really softened things up and made things more airy and just more pleasant, I guess. So not to go into too much detail, but yeah, it made a huge difference, the data cable here. Going from the phone, which is I have this Galaxy S23 Ultra that I used, to the DAC, and then through the cables to the IEMs, and then having these foam tips also made a huge role. So yeah, as you guys can see, it's all about, you know, pairing the right equipment for the IEM that you have. And these things are ultra sensitive to everything because they're so detailed. You know, once you change anything in between, you can actually hear it. So I don't have too many IEMs to compare these to, but I do have some Planar RD-T10 Pros, and you know, these are definitely quite a bit cheaper than the Horizons, but they are planars and they do pretty well also with detail retrieval and just a high end. And to be honest, the RD-T10s are definitely not even in the ballpark of these Horizons, as the T10s are more smoother actually, believe it or not, and probably I would say duller also and more boomy. So kind of the planar detail but smooth, at least here on the RD-T10 Pro. Most planars are more harsh on the upper range, and so it just feels like a resolution downgrade. A more recent IEM here that I have is the 𝐒𝐫𝐢𝐳 Defiant Zeos collaboration. And these are pretty interesting, as they are also only about a quarter of the price of the Horizons, but they actually are in a way maybe more balanced, but they're definitely not even close when it comes to the higher end and just the overall presentation. Yeah, they get, you know, 85% there, but then they just don't have that depth and that resolution like the Horizons. So these are great overall, and you guys can see I also use the same tips as I do on the Horizon, as it makes them smoother. And if you are on a budget, this might be your best bet here, or one of your best bets. These are very friendly and quite good at everything, and definitely a lot more composed as far as normal sound signature goes than the Horizons. The Horizons are just a tad bright. If they were just a tad less bright, they'd probably be almost ideal, I would say. But you know, obviously you can EQ, we're talking about here, without doing any kind of EQs. So this is the last IEM I have, and probably my favorite right now. And again, these are only about a quarter of the price, but these are the Audiophiles Explorer. Now these are completely the other way when it comes to resolution and detail. These are more smooth, soft, cuddly, kind of really just immerse you in the music more than trying to pull out details. So these would be great for like just putting in your ears and just, you know, relaxing, taking a nap, just daydreaming, maybe just doing some schoolwork or whatever. I don't know. They're just so pleasant to listen to, and time just flies with these. And they're also very small and fit great in basically anybody's ear. Bass wise, they're just smooth. They do go pretty low and deep, but nothing like the Horizon. The Horizon really goes deep on the sub bass and gives you the rumble. These are kind of more cushiony style, I guess, if you want to call it that. For everyday listening, these would be my number one picks. And maybe the Defiance would also be a good choice if you want a little more spicy. But if you are treble sensitive, which I kind of am, these here would be one of the best headphones around the $100 range. So what's the value proposition for these Horizons? Well, if you want extreme transparency without being too harsh, these are it. These are neutral, but they give you everything. You know, the good, the bad, it's all in here. And yeah, quality tracks sound great. Poor tracks could be more harsh because of the planars and how detailed they are. But then again, you know, if you're someone that values these things, these are incredible. So these are really great to have as like maybe almost like a benchmark for natural, smooth sound, but also detailed. So it's kind of hard to explain exactly what they do until you hear them. And to my ears, I absolutely loved them until it got to around 8K or so, 6K maybe, somewhere around there, and it's too much for me. But not sure exactly what other IEMs would be able to compete with these. Maybe like Kiwi Astrals or something that are also very bright. And you know, there's a lot of IEMs out there these days. Hard to choose something. Hopefully this review helped you with the Horizons. I'm most likely not going to keep them, as I don't think I'll listen to them enough, even though I'm super impressed with them. And buying these things actually made me realize how much I enjoy the more warmer sound, maybe more thicker and more lush. So I do love detail and the separation and retrievals, but it has to be a tasteful amount where it doesn't hurt me and doesn't want to make me just take the phones off because I can't handle it anymore. Which these things work great after, you know, changing the cable and the tips and just finding the right source and going to that data cable that's silver. It really softened them up and made them enjoyable, where I could listen to them for hours. But then again, not something I want to go back to and listen to. I prefer other things. The Audiophiles Explorers, I think I might like those better, which is strange to say, but yeah, I guess it's all you know, the taste and what you're looking for. But yeah, an excellent IEM for what they are. Probably worth the 300, maybe 250 to 300 would be the perfect price. Under 3 in my opinion. And hopefully you guys enjoy this review. Check out my other hi-fi videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.